Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Lisa Larter. For those of you who do not know me, I am here with the great Alan Weiss, who thought we were recording a podcast. And so he was fiddling with the new mic that I told him to buy, and he was a minute late. And all of a sudden I was panicking. What am I going to do with all these people? And no Alan. And then he joined us. So welcome to our final Fireside chat. We are thrilled that you were here with us today. We have Cass Bald with us, who is on our team. She is going to be our moderator today for those of you who have questions. And before we get started, I'd just like to give you a little bit of an update so that everyone knows what's going on with Masterful Marketing. Last week, Alan and I were informed by the publisher that there have been a couple of, I'm going to call them hiccups. Alan probably has a better word for it than I do, but I noticed that on Amazon, our book release date had changed from September 6th to September 20th. Apparently, we have become victims of supply chain. I told Alan, I think it's really because we've sold way more books than anybody ever expected. And they also pushed out the date of release for the Kindle version of our book, which was available before. Now it's available on the 29th of September, but we have been told that that will change to the 1st of September. So just wanted to give everyone an update on what's going on with the book and to say a huge thank you to all of you who have pre-ordered a copy of the book. We really appreciate it. I also want to just take a moment and summarize some of our book bonuses, because I know that it can be a little bit confusing in terms of all the different pieces of communication that we've had out there. So if you go to masterfulmarketingbook.com, you can see the list of bonuses for one book or for multiple books when you pre-order. The bonus for one book is a reading guide that we are going to be sending out to you after the release of the book, and you can use the digital version of that reading guide in conjunction with the book. The other bonus that we have, for some of you who have participated in the Funnel Free Marketing Summit that was hosted 2 weeks ago, if you were unable to participate and you would like to access the recordings, you can email books@lisalarter.com, and we will give you access to those recordings. And then the third bonus is a workshop that Alan is offering on brevity and dynamic communications, which I feel like I could use right about now. and that was for those of you who had written an endorsement on Amazon. Alan, how do you want to treat that? Because that workshop is the 29th, and now that the publisher has moved the dates for us, it's not so easy for folks to do their review.
Well, actually, I think it's time for our first break in this session. So why don't we take 15, come back, and we'll discuss that. I don't care. I mean, I'm happy to include people in the workshop. It's going to be on the 29th. Is that what you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's on
August 29th.
Dynamic communication. And what we're asking is, if you feel it's justified and you give us a 5-star review on Amazon, if you feel it's justified, I'm happy to include you in that workshop. Now, since you're not going to get the book before the workshop, I guess I would ask that you feel it's justified in advance. But if you don't give us a 5-star, I'm not going to hold it against you. And so if you want to be included, we can do that. You just have to promise though to buy the book, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Sounds good. And they need to email you directly for that.
Yeah.
Correct,
Alan, what's my email, Lisa?
Alan@summitconsulting.com.
That email.
That email works, unless you're trying to chase them down for a Zoom call, and in which case it wasn't firing as fast as usual. Alan,
I'm going to start charging you by the hour and violate my own principles if we don't get down to business here. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I think we should start by talking about survival of the eyeballs. It's the final chapter in our book, and we talk about a bunch of different ways that people can get visibility in terms of their marketing. Some of the things that we talk about in the book are not exactly the same as your marketing gravity. Some are. And so in a world where we are competing for attention in order to generate the opportunity for new business, what do you believe people should think about first and foremost when it comes to gaining that?
Well, this is a coincidence because I didn't know we were doing this today. But if you take a look at my shirt here, it says everyone does not get a trophy. And on the back of the shirt, it says work hard, play hard. And when I walk through, as you can tell, I have a great tan. I'm just back from Nantucket. Thank you very much. But as I walk through like a pool area, or people actually say to me, "You got that right," and I have to think about what I got right, but they're looking at my T-shirt. And so if you want to think about where the eyeballs are going and the ears are going, you're not going to get much just by showing up. And so if you insist on immersing yourself in the ocean, you're not going to get noticed too much. Great whites get noticed, right? But the plankton do not, basically. So I don't think we're here to continue with my oceanographic metaphor. We're not here to stick our toes in the water. We're here to make waves. Somebody asked me in my forums today, how do I deal with this? What is it? Harrow, Lisa, help a reporter out.
Oh, yes, helpareporterout.com.
And he gave examples of responses he used to his reporters' inquiries. And I said, it's about your leader is trying to give you the blame and take credit for himself or herself, and your leader is unfair and this and that. And the person on my forum gave these answers and how to deal with a rough boss. My answer would have been stop whining. My answer would have been, for God's sake, get aggressive, show your worth, and stop assuming it's always the boss. I mean, your boss is a superior to you for a reason, probably, and it's probably not politics. So let's stop whining. So I think what we have to do is we have to stand out in the crowd. Now, I want to say two things about that. The first thing is this. You can stand out in a crowd in a unique way. So I'm starting, I have a podcast series called The Uncomfortable Truth, and Lisa has been helping me transform it. And on September 1st, we're transforming it. We're going to have show notes, and every other session, that's twice a month, every other session, I'm dealing with an innovative thought leader and expert, one of my peers around the world. I've got university presidents, I've got CEOs, I got people from the media, people who are surprisingly ready and willing to do that. And so that's going to stand out. The Uncomfortable Truth is my trademark. That's one way to do this. A second way to do this is if you're going to jump in the ocean, then you have to be a great white. So if you're market or you're comfortable with social media and that kind of thing, you have to do something different on social media. Mm-hmm. And there are people like Noah Kagan and Seth Godin and so forth who do things differently on social media.
How about the crying CEO?
I'm sorry?
How about the crying CEO?
I don't know the crying CEO.
Yes, you do, on LinkedIn.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the guy who posted about the layoffs on LinkedIn. He's been dubbed the crying CEO. So, I think that's actually a really great point, because we're talking about survival of the eyeballs. So are all eyeballs worth it?
Well, the fact is that guy made a fool of himself, right? And he was mocked. And, it's the old phrase, well, as long as they spell my name right, I don't care how bad the critique is. That ain't true anymore. That doesn't work anymore. And so you want to be seen as somebody, not necessarily as someone who everyone agrees with, but as somebody who makes you think. Mm-hmm. So I don't care if people agree with me or not. And I don't try to tick people off. All I want to do is make people think. And if you think and you apply critical thinking skills, you're going to be better off. But you have to do that in an original way. Okay. Lisa, am I answering your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, critical thinking, it's a little bit of a oxymoron when you think about it in relation to social media, because so many people apply their marketing on social media where they're following the pack instead of trying to stand out from the crowd, or they're spending all of their time consuming content from people that likely aren't as successful as they are on social media, but they're posting Pinterest perfect shots that would lead you to believe they are. So what do you think, when it comes to critical thinking and thought leadership, are some great ways for people to do that? You have built a brand around being contrarian, and being contrarian can be scary for some people because they're basically going against the grain. So if people don't want to take a contrarian approach, what are some other ways that they can approach their thought leadership to stand out from what everybody else is saying?
Well, I think that it's not just an intellectual exercise. Critical thinking today is about intellect and emotion. Logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. You want a combination of both. There's something called the heuristic affect. And the heuristic affect says that a lot of people who have this or who choose it, it's not an illness, will act more based on emotion than anything else. And we see people who go through recency bias. What they hear last is what they act on, and so on. I think we need a healthy combination. And I do think that while an impulse decision is basically an emotional decision, right? Whether
Oh, Alan, you got muted somehow. Hang on.
mute my audio. Am I
Yeah,
good
no.
now? Yeah?
Yes, you're good now.
Somebody's got it in for me. I'm not paranoid, but somebody. All right. What was I up to, Lisa?
I don't know. I was distracted by the background noise and I looked to see who it was. And I think somebody else looked and muted you at the same time. So I completely lost my train of thought.
Well, I was sorry. Okay. So look, critical thinking skills are about emotion and logic,
Yes.
right? And we need them both. They're both very healthy and they're both important. But in terms of influence, right? And in terms of masterful marketing, which is what Lisa and I are talking about, you have to know how to use them. Art and science, right? You have to know how to use them. And so to create influence with someone, you can't just provide an intellectual argument. They might argue back intellectually, but that's just, you're not here to play chess, right? So if you want to make waves, it's sort of a bodily contact sport, metaphorically speaking, and you have to get people emotionally involved. So I'm not bashful about saying to people, I know you've always done it that way, and that's why you're not more successful than you are. You have to challenge people. And if you challenge good people, they will react appropriately. If you challenge weak people, they will get scared or run off or yell at you. Who cares? Those aren't the people you want. You want strong people. And strong people are the ones who take coaching. Strong people are the ones who accept critique. Strong people are the ones who aren't afraid to show vulnerability. So let's not conflate critical thinking skills strictly with logic. It's also about involving the emotions and knowing how to do it. I'll say one more thing. In critical thinking skills, right? Some guy was making a point on LinkedIn about critical thinking skills, and I showed he wasn't critically thinking. He started his sentence with, most parents today don't pay enough attention to providing their kids with information about critical thinking skills. I said to him, what's your basis for most parents today? Where does that come from? I mean, if he has an emotional argument to make about equipping kids better, fine. But intellectually, he loses all my attention when he says most. And have you heard people say there are two kinds of people in the world, right? There are only two kinds of people. What they're really saying is there are two kinds of people, those who agree with me and those who don't.
That's the world today.
I've had it with that. So that's the antithesis of critical thinking, okay? That's emotional slop.
I'm looking at the comments. Alan has been scaring me for years. I must be a good person. I keep coming back.
Bless you, my child.
Mary, I can totally relate. That's why I asked him to write a book with me, because I knew he would scare me enough to do it. All right. So back to marketing. In the chapter on survival of the eyeballs, we talk about a bunch of different avenues where you can get more attention on you and your work. We talk about events, we talk about content, we talk about commenting on other people's content. And it's interesting because the one thing that prompted my comment to you about the CEO crying on LinkedIn was somebody's comment in the chat saying that they saw you respond to it. I saw you respond to it as well. Networking, so growing your network, podcasting, video creation, etc. Right now, there is a huge trend, and I actually laugh, Alan, because you're not a trend follower, and you have accidentally become a trend setter with A Minute with Alan. Short form video content is growing at a rate of, let me see, it is up, I think, 400% over a year ago on YouTube, with now 39 billion views of short form content that is under a minute in length. So what do you recommend? It's easy for you. How do you do this? How do you sit in front of your camera and just shoot a minute-long videos and shoot 5 of them at a time? What is the process that you follow to create that marketing?
Well, first of all, I'm not afraid. You have to be fearless. One of my recent books is Fearless Leadership. You have to be fearless, not worry about what people think or say or anything. And secondly, you have to do this for yourself. What's in it for me? You have to be happy about doing it. So I just write down 5 bullet points. And I look at the first one, and the first one says, dogs are fearless. And so I do 60 seconds on dogs being fearless. Now, when you record, you can see the countdown, but whether it's 50 seconds or a minute and a half, I don't really care, but it's a minute with Alan, right?
Right.
And it's rapid fire and it's fast. And not everyone loves it, but the people who like it really like it. And it's free. It's the right price. And your people put it on social media, and it goes on my blog, and it goes all over the place and so forth. And people follow it, and it gives me a chance to express myself. And I try to stay away from the totally partisan. I don't take a position with a political party, but I will, for example, lambaste any politician, no matter what their party, if they do something disingenuous. I stay away from sex and religion because it's just kind of wise to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will go right up to the brink, and one of my most popular things I ever did was, we all get these things. It's from, let's just say it's from a woman, and in parentheses, it will say she, her, the pronoun thing, which I think is virtue signaling, because what am I going to do? Keep an index file of everybody's pronouns. So when I refer to them in the third person, I know what to use. So when I wrote right back, I put in parentheses, the prince, his grace. And I mean, a lot of people hated that, but a lot of people loved it. And those are the people I'm trying to appeal to, the people with that kind of joy for life. When we take ourselves too seriously, we're really in trouble. So get back to your point is this. I come up with 5 things. I mean, it's simple as hell. You've got about 10 in the bank right now. I'll do another 5 tomorrow. I have to clean up tomorrow, so I'll do 5 because I'll look better. And not that I don't, respect all of you, but, this is free. So.
And so are the videos.
I do 5 videos, and I do them literally. They take me maybe 7 or 8 minutes by the time I'm done, and that's it. So
and what are you recording on?
I record. Your people told me to record on GarageBand, which is easy to use. You told me to get this mic, so I got a stand too. And I'm doing one of these new interviews I've talked about for The Uncomfortable Truth. Tomorrow I'm discussing the future with Ali Brown, who's probably the finest coach of female executives and entrepreneurs in the country, if not beyond. And Ali and I know each other for a long time. She's spoken at one of my events. So I've got myself all equipped to begin with her. So I don't know how much of a trendsetter I am, but I do know that I believe that if you do make waves, if you set your own speed, so to speak, the right people will follow you. That is, the right people for you will follow you. But you can't please everybody, and stop trying.
So the one thing that for those of you who are listening, if you're considering short form video content, there are 3 channels where short form video content is the most popular right now. You've got YouTube Shorts, you've got Instagram Reels, and you've got TikTok. I'm going to assume that for the vast majority of you, if you are in the professional space, YouTube Shorts would be the place where your content would probably be the most well received, and would also get the added benefit of SEO optimization, because you're using YouTube, and YouTube is the 2nd largest search engine in the planet, which is owned by Google. Couple of tips. Alan records on GarageBand. It's actually better for you to record vertically on your phone for these shorts, because that's the way that they are uploaded on those particular channels. Alan's are uploaded on YouTube like real videos. They're not uploaded like shorts. A couple of other things you may want to consider when you're doing this content is captions.
Lisa, excuse me. Yeah. I made a mistake. I don't use GarageBand. I use Photo Booth.
Photo Booth. Okay.
Yeah. Photo Booth. GarageBand is just audio. I use Photo Booth. Just want to clear the record.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And if you are going to get into these shorts, it's also a good idea if you record in the native application. So if you are uploading directly to YouTube using the Shorts app, it will give you the option to add captions to your video. It is a good idea to do that, because a lot of video is consumed with the audio turned off. But I think that what I like about YouTube Shorts or Shorts as a whole, Alan, and we haven't really done this with yours yet, but I like the idea of using them to also talk about something that is longer form in nature. So you could be talking about the return to Australia, or you could be talking about, an upcoming program that you have, and just be seeding one small piece from that program as a way to get people interested in more. So that's another way that people can use those short-term videos, because right now they're really, really, really popular. And I remember when you first started A Minute with Alan, it didn't occur to me how popular video content under a minute would become. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Cass Bald, I saw a question in the chat asking if the bonuses were applicable to Kindle, and yes, they absolutely are. Do we have any questions in the chat for Alan or I?
Yes. So Douglas has said that he can see some of Alan and Lisa's books over people's shoulders in the call here. So he's asking, what are good other hard copy items to market with other than a book?
Hard copy items to market with. Well, look, I've discussed this before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but there are 5 key things to short-term marketing. And first is referrals, and then there's speaking, and there's publishing, there's hosted events, and like that. But if you actually are talking about a product to put in people's hands, I would regard a podcast as a product. I would regard a video as a product. I would regard something that people can download online as a product. Here's something that nobody knows, but I'll tell all you folks that is the first part you do know. I've got this global learning program that's based on $1 Million Consulting. It's $115. My point was to have everybody be able to access this around the world. I'm not that interested in making $1 billion anymore. I want to try to spread the word to as many people as I can. And just yesterday, the 47th country joined, and people from the 47th country have taken advantage of this. So there are all kinds of people who have accessed this platform. So I'm thinking, what you don't know is I'm thinking of doing a follow-up now, and I'm thinking of doing another 15 or 17 module follow-up very inexpensively that will be a more advanced program. So whoever asked this question, I consider that a hard copy product too, even though it's downloadable online. And this is a global economy we're in. And we have to be able to do things that anybody can download. And I don't think it'll be too long before, even though English is the world language, I don't think it'll be too long before when I do something like that, just as you see on LinkedIn and other places, it'll automatically be transcribed into German or French or Italian or Spanish or whatever. I think that's going to come very, very soon.
I would add 2 things to that, Alan, that are hard copy format that our team has helped people with. One is a research report or brochure. If you have a corporate buyer and you want to be able to actually mail something to someone, a nicely designed, styled research report with really good information in it. And then the second is what we call a skinny book. And a skinny book is really a book that has around 10,000 words in it. You can add air into the book. You can add some places where people can take notes and things like that. But it's also an inexpensive way. If you have something to say, but you don't have 25 to 60,000 words, you can produce a skinny book. And I think you used to produce books like that, Alan.
I'm getting a skinny book. Vamp for 20 seconds.
Okay. All right. I didn't realize that Alan did this. Somebody told me actually after. So, but they're a great book, especially with today's attention spans. It's another reason why short videos are good and skinny books are good. People have a hard time finishing anything that they start. So the shorter the content, the easier it is for them to consume.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. I'm back. Now, this is the Consulting Bible. This is a major work, all right? This is soft cover. Some of my books are in hardcover. And so this is a major work. It's in the 2nd edition. But I alluded to earlier, oh no, this is Your Legacy Is Now, not Fearless Leadership. And you can see this is a much thinner book. Now, this is hardcover. Much thinner book, though, by a major publisher. And so this is a smaller book. This is a skinny book. And this is one of my best-selling things of all time. I've never changed this. I was 20 years old. It's $7. But maximizing fees gets people's attention. And, it's a very skinny book. And there are some, it looks like this inside. So you have a wide variety of things, as Lisa's pointing out, and skinny books are good. Ebooks are great. So you have a lot of options. And today, I think you can take the same kind of intellectual property and repurpose it in different formats where you go into more and more detail or just overviews. I'll give you an example. When I get a new computer or a new mic or whatever I'm playing around with, you have 2 sets of things. I have a new iPad and it says quick step-by-step, and then it says details. So the details go in the trash because I have no time. I haven't read the details on my automobiles. Have you ever seen a car manual these days? You have to take 2 months. Who needs it? Tell me how to start the damn thing and where the headlights and the radio are. That's all I need to know. So I'm always going for the short, and I think that you should practice that too, because a lot of people just want to see that, and it works for them.
Mhm. We recently helped Gene Moran create a skinny book like that. If you go to genemoran.com, his website, we helped him create a short form version of a book called Capital Currency, but he also created a program to go with the book similar to Alan's $1 Million Consulting for the World. So the book can be purchased on Amazon, but when you read the book, it actually references the program. So these skinny books can be a way to introduce people to a program like that is a digital download, or even consulting services that you offer.
So. And the same Gene Moran and I are co-authoring a book that comes out in December called $1 Million Influence, which is a major book. So I think you should vary what you do because different strokes for different folks, and you never know how people learn.
Yes. Nancy, we do self-publish the skinny books. So what our team does is we help with the copy editing, the galley layout, the cover design, and then the uploading to Amazon. So we upload it to Amazon with you being the author, therefore you retain all of the royalties for any sales that you get from Amazon. You can also work with a local printer and just find out the size specifications that they need if you want to have bulk orders printed. But I think that, those are just a couple of extra ways that you can create some materials that are physical in nature versus online if you want to send it out to people. Cass, any other questions?
The next one is just a quick one. What is the least expensive mic that is still good? Lisa, note you use earbuds and a speaker, not a mic. Is that still good enough?
I am using this mic right here, which is a Rode NT, and it's on a boom arm so that I can adjust it. And you'll notice that you can hear me right now, but if I go really, really close to the mic, you can see how my audio changes. So when it comes to podcasting, audio matters more than a live environment like this where you can see me. That is the mic that I recommend. I would say the least expensive one is probably one of the Snowball mics, but the sound quality isn't as good. I think this Rode mic is like $150. I don't think it's that expensive. And the reason that I use headphones is because sometimes when you don't have headphones, you can hear an echo where the sound comes through your computer speakers and gets picked up by the microphone. So I always use headphones just to try to keep my audio as clean as possible. But I also recommend an app called Crisp, KRISP.ai. And Crisp.ai does a really nice job of eliminating background noise when you are either on Zoom or recording a podcast.
Okay, next question is from Roger. Roger asks, does it make more sense rather than knock yourself out with social media? Wouldn't webinars where there is a chance for two-way conversation where people can get a firsthand experience of you and can interact?
So the question is, do webinars make sense as opposed to just being on social media?
I think so, yes.
Well, yeah. I mean, what we're doing here is more effective than just doing something open on social media. Lisa gets upset with me because I just think social media is a huge time dump. There are some exceptions, and it works for me in that I'm in the retail business. But if you're in the corporate business, I don't really like it very much. And so the more you can bring people into an intimate experience, I mean, the best thing is to be with them in person. But if you can't and you're with them remotely, a webinar or a seminar or a workshop, whatever you want to call it, it's, I think, far better. And so that's where you'll get spin-off business. That's where you get referral business. That's where you get evangelism going on. So I think it's far, far better. I think this is the one thing that hasn't changed in the 30 years I've been in this business is it's a relationship business. So technology has changed, circumstances have changed, the economy's changed and so forth, but it's still a relationship business. And buyers make decisions based on other people's recommendations. They don't make decisions based on trolling social media. So you got to personalize the experience as much as possible. Don't forget, the real definition, the pragmatic definition of a brand is it's how people think about you when you're not around.
Mm-hmm. I would also say that webinars do not need to be traditional webinar. So I have Zoom webinar and I have Zoom like this, just a regular Zoom application. And so Alan and I made the decision that instead of using Zoom webinar, where we wouldn't be able to see your faces, we would only be able to see names and chat, that we wanted to use Zoom where people could feel like they were participating in the conversation with us and we could see people's faces. If you are going to use Zoom in its regular format like this to host your, I'm going to call it a webinar or your conversation, there are a few things that you'll want to remember to do in your settings. The first is you will want to disable screen sharing for all participants. You can enable screen sharing on an individual basis, but you want to avoid somebody accidentally hitting the share screen button or intentionally hitting the share screen button and taking over your event. The second, trust me, it happens. The second thing that is a good idea to do is to mute everyone when they enter. That way, the default, if somebody wants to speak, is to unmute themselves versus the other way around. But I think that definitely having conversations this way where you can see people are far more engaging and effective than when it's just two talking heads on a screen and you can't see and or interact with other people.
Yeah, if I can just add one thing, I'm just looking. I'm just looking at one screen, but we have not. I can actually look at 9 screens here. When I do something like this brevity workshop I'm doing at the end of the month, I make a request that people leave their video on and they don't put a placeholder or a photo up out of courtesy, because I want to see people's reactions. And I am not as effective dealing with photos. I don't go into an art gallery and start preaching to paintings. So I want to see people. I want to see the reaction. And even if people are muted, you could tell if they're laughing and you could tell if they're puzzled. So I just make that simple request. If somebody doesn't do it, I don't jump up and down and embarrass them, but I do make the request, and it puts people on notice that, this is a community. We need to look at each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, a few years ago, I interviewed Dan Sullivan after he wrote the book, Who Not How, with Ben Hardy. And when I requested to interview him for my business book club, Thought Readers, his stipulation was he'd be happy to do the interview, but he wanted to ensure that everyone who was there participating was on camera. And so I thought that was an interesting request. It was the first time someone had ever asked that of me. And I think it made for a much better experience for the participants as well. Cass, do we have any other questions?
Yes, the next question comes from Mary Lou. She says, everyone is pushing courses nowadays. Make a course as passive income, but what if I don't want that path? What other ways can I scale as a blogger / influencer or in social media marketing?
Well, it depends who your ideal buyer is. If you don't want to do workshops or whatever it is you said there, that's fine. But most online learning does not work. We found this during the pandemic that online learning for academia doesn't work at all. It doesn't work for high school, doesn't work for college. In terms of business, it seldom works because people don't have the discipline or because it's just not exciting enough. So you have to do something if you do it passively. For example, the course I talked about before, this global learning program, every one of the modules not only has 10 minutes of video from me, aside from text and slides and downloads, it also has 2 or 3 minutes from 2 or 3 people who are my clients. Mm-hmm. And so they're seeing people who are their peers, who are at different stages of learning, and that creates much more interest and much more recognition and attachment. So I think you have to make it, if you're going to do it online, you have to make it something that's different and engaging, and people want to keep coming back to. I also have strange definitions of passive income. About 2 or 3 years ago, I did something which was fishbowl coaching, and so I'd get a volunteer, and the volunteer is, I'm looking at Donna here, happens to be in the middle of my screen. And everybody around Donna would be, watching the fishbowl. I'd be coaching Donna, for example. And then after I did that in real time, then people would make comments on what they learned and why I did certain things and so forth. That's a lot of fun. It's fascinating. You can make a lot of money doing that, but people can really learn when you do that as well.
The other thing I would say, Alan, that you have done from a content perspective to really, you are the ultimate influencer in the consulting space. And I think you would agree that influence has come from writing books. It's a primary way that people have found out about you over the years. Would you agree?
Well, if you look at the thought leaders in different categories, I mean, my peers are Seth Godin and Marshall Goldsmith and Marcus Buckingham and so forth. All of those people and more have written a lot of books. The second thing is, though, I ask people, when I did something called Getting Started in Consulting in Boston a couple of years ago, and we had 200 people present. And I asked people quickly how they heard of me originally. And 190 had heard of me because they read one of my books. And the other 10 had heard me speak and then picked up my books. So you're absolutely right. The social proof is unassailable. And that is when you're a thought leader, when you're an expert, you tend to write books to get your IP out there. And that's how people learn about you. And they're very, very important, especially today when people are writing books, reading books while they're riding on bicycles, while they're, on an airplane, doesn't matter where you are. So yeah, absolutely.
The second thing that you could look at doing, Mary Lou, is some type of a community. So I have a community in the Strategy Lab, which is a program that I run, and there's learning labs and things that go on inside of that community. But people pay to be part of communities today and will consume content that isn't necessarily yours. So, Alan just talked about how in his $1 Million Consulting for the World program, he has short videos that have been created by some of his customers. Another thing that you can do as an influencer is you can curate content. If you don't want to be the one who is creating the content, you can go out and find the content. So I'm going to give you an example. I talked earlier about short-term video. I have short-term video on the brain because I'm doing a presentation, a learning lab on it tomorrow for the Strategy Lab. But one of the things that I think I'd rather stick my finger in my eye than do is to create videos on the step-by-step instructions on how to upload and edit a YouTube short or upload and edit an Instagram reel. There's that work has already been done. There's videos all over the place that actually show people how to do that. So the content that you provide a community with doesn't necessarily have to be yours. It could be a really well curated selection of high quality content that you have found for people in that community. Cass.
The next question is from Tanya. She says, how do you add captions or subtitles to YouTube shorts? In what app can you do this, or does YouTube do it automatically?
Email me, lisa@lisalarter.com, and I will send you a video that shows you how to do that through the YouTube Shorts app.
The next question comes from Allison. She says, possibly a limiting belief, but what if you offer a Zoom meeting to the public, but then very few people show up? At least with a webinar, no one can see if you've failed to attract people in.
Okay, all right. So listen, never be hesitant because you fear failure. All right. Because it's not really failure. So if a few people show up, you have options. One option is, hey, only 4 of you showed up today. Let's make the best of it. You all have more airtime. We'll have more intimate conversation. So in the back of your head, you're prepared for the fact that you might just have 4 or 5 people. When I was far younger and entering this profession, and I was doing things, of course, live, I used to stand outside the room very nervously and count the people going in. If I only saw 5 or 6 people, I get really panicky. It was hysterical. So number one, go ahead with what you've got, but turn it into an opportunity. Make lemonade by saying we have more airtime, more intimacy. The second thing is, if it really hurts your learning design, if you can't do what you want to do because you need 3 or 4 teams or something, then apologize and say, I'm sorry, more people couldn't come. You should know that in advance, by the way, so you can give an ample cancellation period. But so I'm sorry you didn't come here, and here's how I can make it up to you. I'm going to refund your money. I'm going to do this again tomorrow, whatever it is. But don't be. You called it a self-limiting belief, and you're right. Always prepare for success. Don't prepare for failure. And the first time we did these 2 brothers who owned a company up in New Hampshire, a publishing company, decided they had a great marketing reach, had a big list, and I had all this content in $1 Million Consulting, and they said, let's collaborate. We'll run something called rainmaking. And they put it out to this list, and they got really nervous. We were charging $1,000 a person. And the room was set up for 50 people, thinking big. 80 people turned up from about 5 different countries. And now they're worried for another reason. Their seats are shoved in. And I'm sitting on a couch out in the hallway, just having a great time. And they said, you're on in 5 minutes. What are you doing? I said, what do you want me to do? Prepare? I'm prepared. 80 people, 20 people, I'm prepared. And I said, look, I know it's uncomfortable in here. Let's make the best of it. Take your jackets off. Let's just stand up. I don't care. Get comfortable. So you have to go with the flow here. But if I want to tell you something from really a deep belief I have. If you're happy, other people will be happy. I tell people in all my workshops, as long as I'm having a good time, it's all that matters. And while it sounds selfish, what I mean is if I'm having a good time, you're going to have a good time. Enthusiasm and energy are infectious. And so don't be so worried about what people think. Be instead concerned about how much you can help them.
I would just add that we all have a low number of registrations typically when we first start. I think the very first webinar I did, I had 21 people register. And I think back then, 30% of people showed up. So I think I had 6 people on my webinar, but I showed up and I did the best that I could for those 6 people. If you're concerned about the number of people who have shown or who show up, then you have to do more work marketing the webinar to get people to register so that you do get more people to show up. But we all start somewhere. You can't be afraid of because you look at where other people are when you're starting.
Okay, I want to tell a story. Okay, I can do this in about 2 minutes. I love magic. And my wife and I are at a casino in Atlantic City. And there's a magic act, the great Randy, of course, and the lovely Carolyn, right? And so I said, it's in a lounge act. Let's get there early. I want to get front row seat and see this. I love magic. So we go to the lounge, and there's about 20 minutes to go. And I can't wait to see the amazing Randy, lovely Carolyn. And with about 5 minutes left, I look around and we're the only ones there, except for 3 people at the next table. The place is empty. And I said to my wife, maybe we should, and the bartender takes the mic and says, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the amazing, Randy, lovely Carolyn. And on they come. So the 5 of us are applauding. He's pulling rabbits out of hats. He's doing things out of his sleeve. He's levitating stuff. The whole business, he's really good. And then he says, can I have 3 volunteers? So I said to my wife, do not move. So the other 3 get up. He says, let's give them a round of applause. So my wife and I are applauding. And he hypnotizes them and they're doing air guitar. He cut somebody in half, the whole business. Let's have a big round of applause. We applaud again. So he finishes his act. The 5 of us give him a standing ovation. So I said to my wife, listen, I've been on a stage, with 7 people in the audience in my career. I want to go back and tell him how impressed I am. So I go back to the dressing room and I said to him, look, Randy, that was fantastic. That amount of energy with just the 5 of us. And he says, sir, I have done this act for one person in the audience. You prepare, you show up, you do the best you can, you go home. And that's a lesson to live by. Now, I do wonder with that one person in the audience how we got 3 volunteers, but I don't want to think too hard about that. He was the amazing Randy. You know what I'm saying? Now, that's a true story I just told you. And you have to understand, as long as you prepare, you show up and you do your best, you're fine. Stop worrying about the number of people. When I see empty seats, I say, geez, some poor people didn't take advantage.
Absolutely. That's a great story.
All true.
Cass.
The next question is about podcasting. What is the best format for a podcast? A monologue, a one-on-one interview, a panel, or other?
Panels are deadly.
Yeah,
I mean, panels are like Portuguese men of war. They can just kill you, you'll drown. So I would never do a panel. Everybody feels they need to speak and they say the same things over and over again. I've been doing a podcast for, I don't know what, Lisa, 3-4 years, 5 years, I don't know.
I was your first guest.
But most of my podcasts have been individual and they're about 5 to 8 minutes. So now I've decided I'm going to change that because, I get bored easy and I thought I can make it more exciting. So now every other podcast, I'll do these guests and everyone in between, it'll just be me. So I'm alternating, but they'll all be about 20 to 30 minutes. And I think that when you have a guest, and by the way, don't call them interviews, call them discussions. Call them side-by-side chats. Call them something where you establish a peer level relationship, not a subordinate relationship. And when you have these discussions, I think that they can become far more interesting for the listener. And I never, ever, ever accept questions in advance. I never want to see a question in advance. I am best spontaneously. And unless my guest requests it and demands it, I don't give them questions in advance. I'll give them if they want a sort of a general topic area I'll be talking about. So I would advise if you alternate individual and guests, I think that's going to be dynamite. Lisa, what do you think?
Well, I approach my podcast a little bit differently. I approach my podcast in terms of seasons. And so what I will do is I will come up with a theme for the season. And typically each season is going to be anywhere from 6 to 10 episodes. And much the way you build out an outline for a book, I build out a short little outline for each episode of the season. And then I invite guests to be part of some of the episodes, not all, based on the topic. So if Alan and I are doing a season together right now, we're calling it We Talk Business instead of She Talks Business. And we are talking about things related to masterful marketing and book marketing in general. And I like that because for me, it makes it easier for me to have a focus and go deep on the topic or the theme that I want to cover. And typically I'm going to say 30 to 40% of my shows are with a guest and the rest are me alone. I agree with Alan. I would never do a panel. It's too hard to coordinate when people are going to speak. When it comes to podcasting, you don't want people speaking over each other. It makes for not a positive user experience when someone is listening. And so I would only go with one guest. My length of time duration is typically closer to 30 minutes. I find that to be a good length of time for me for a couple of reasons. One, I like the idea of repurposing content. So if I'm talking about a topic for 30 minutes and I have a little bit of an outline, I can take the transcript from that if I want, and I can create additional pieces of content from that. So I like to go long enough that I can actually mine the content to get some additional value from it. Cass, back to you.
Mike says, I'm just getting started and feeling a little stalled, some of which is self-inflicted. Could you comment on your observations about getting some initial momentum?
Some people learn to swim by getting in the low end and they sort of paddle around a little bit. And then some people just jump in. And I think that reading a book can give you awareness, and listening to someone in a speech or in a training program can transfer skills, but you have to apply. And the most important thing is to get out and do it. And that's why I think you have to be fearless. We all have to be fearless. And so, you don't have to, well, you're not going to be able to start with the president of Boeing or JP Morgan Chase anyway. Start with the president of a small firm, start with the owner of a small firm, start with a nonprofit, but get out there and start meeting buyers. Get out there and start providing proposals. Get out there and start making speeches. And so you can do it in a low threat manner, but you need to do it. You need to get your lumps. When I was working for a firm in Princeton, I did some workshops that, the feedback on the second morning from the group was, we're surprised he came back. So you have to get out and do that. And you have to get slammed around a little bit. It's the only way you'll learn. And you cannot be afraid to fail. Failure is just another step forward. You can't be afraid to fail. So if I were you, stop using words like stalled. It's bad self-talk. Stop using any words like struggle or problem. Excuse me. And instead start talking about the fact that you have opportunities and you're going to exploit them. You're going to capitalize on them and find places to start to apply your craft, and you'll get better and better.
I would add one more thing to that, which is hire a coach. Hire somebody who can guide you and create a bit of accountability for you in terms of taking action. A client of mine a few weeks ago, or actually a month or so ago, made a commitment to me that they would do a video. They would share a video on LinkedIn as a way to attract buyers before their next call with me, or they would forfeit the call, because we had talked about this a number of times. And so when the coaching call came up and I looked and saw that they hadn't done the video yet, I prompted them to do the video during our coaching call, which only took them a couple of minutes to do. But because they were working with me or working with a coach, they did something that they felt uncomfortable doing. And the result of that is they're now working on a $100,000 proposal from someone who viewed that video. So sometimes you need somebody to push you. I remember when I first started working with Alan, and he's like, you need to write a value proposition. I'm like, what the hell's a value proposition? I don't even know what that is. But I knew I had to find out what it was, and I needed to write it, and I needed to send it to Alan. So I do think there is value when you are feeling stalled to work with somebody who can actually help you start to build that momentum. We have more questions, Cass?
Yes. How would you recommend promoting an online course? Do you recommend marketing it to existing clients only, or both existing and new clients? Yeah.
And Lisa, is your point when I talk like this, I sound differently when I'm close to the mic?
Yes.
Do I sound sexier?
No, you sound clearer.
Oh, in that case. All right, so listen, you want to market, where was I? When you want to market an online course, it depends who your audience is. If you're selling retail, in other words, you're expecting people to purchase this course individually, go all over social media. I mean, that's what you want to do, but you need to run excerpts. You need to give people free samples. I'm just starting a new newsletter, and unlike most of my newsletters, which are free, this is for pay, called the Coaching Confidential. It starts in September. And I'm offering people a sample copy so they can take a look at what it is and make decisions about it. So you have to allow people to, sniff and smell and feel what it's about. And you want to get it to if the question was, should you send it to your people who know you or existing clients? Yes, because they're going to be your evangelists. But you want to get it out there, and you want to let people know it's there and get a sample of it. And don't be disheartened. I mean, to pick up on some of these prior questions, stay with it, because sometimes, it took Seinfeld and Friends a couple of seasons before they caught on. They weren't instant hits. So give it time.
The other thing that I would add is what I call invitation marketing. And that is maybe before you actually create the course, see if there's interest in the course. So I will often share things on social media or with my mailing list and say, I am thinking about creating A, B, C, D, E. Is that something that would be of value to you? If so, hit reply and let me know. Because I have seen people invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in creating a perfect course that they didn't have an audience that was interested in buying. So I do think that depending on where you're at in your business, if you're Alan Weiss and you have a really large following, then you can feel pretty confident that you're going to have sales come through based on the past performance that you've had on other things that you've sold. But if you're doing this for the first time, I think you need to consider, A, what are the different ways that the course can provide value beyond just selling it and monetizing? Can it be something that you give to existing clients as a bonus? Can it be something that you encourage existing clients to buy for team members, et cetera? So don't just think in terms of how do I sell it, but think about how do I use it in different ways, and how do I make sure that I have an audience that is actually interested in buying. Cass.
Lisa, you talk sometimes about content in terms of rocks, pebble, and sand. What are the current most effective types of pebbles and sand content to encourage buyers toward the more personal engagements or rocks?
Well, I want to make sure I understand the question, because I normally talk about sales in terms of rocks, pebbles, and sand, and how people get stuck in the sand trying to sell their lowest end offering, and that prevents them from gaining momentum. If I was thinking about content, for me, the same kind of metaphor applies. What is something big that I can create that I can then create smaller pieces from? And so there's a secondary question in here from Patrick that says, how do you repurpose a podcast transcript? For me, it's taking something like a podcast that's 30 to 60 minutes in length, taking that transcript, reading through it, and mining for smaller pieces or bigger pieces of content that can come from it. So I could take a transcript and I could edit it and create a longer blog post or a research report or a skinny book. But I could also take it and I could pull out small pieces of content that I could use on LinkedIn. I could create swipeable content. I could create standalone content. I could create a list of topics that I could do short videos on. So I like to think of your content as something that you can pull apart and use in many different formats versus the initial format that you created it in.
The next question is, how valuable is a mailing list or a customer list?
How deep is the ocean? How high is the sky? That was a song, wasn't it? It's everything. You know, I mean, when people ask me what would I have done differently, I always give them the same answer. I would have saved names. You know, there was no internet back then. There was no computers and so forth, but I could have taken names down in a little book. Everybody did, and I didn't. And so I regret not saving enough names. You know, my mailing list now is around 20,000. I've got, I don't know, 9,500 followers on Twitter and 85 on LinkedIn or whatever that is. But if you want to market, you need names. And I think I've said this before in this group, but I define reach as the number of names that are either recommenders or buyers. I mean, you can have a huge list, but that doesn't matter unless they're recommenders or buyers. And so that, to me, that's really reach. And we have to do a much better job doing that. And you know, one of the reasons to put on a free workshop and a free seminar and so forth is you get people and you can capture their email addresses. One of the things that Lisa showed me that I was very skeptical about were these pop-up menus. And, you know, I didn't think they were worth very much and they were annoying, but she said, well, let's just give it a try. If you don't like it, we'll take it back down. And we did that. I made up 11 things on the spot, 11 key things for consulting, whatever it was, you know, I just made them up. And she put it on this pop-up menu and everybody was downloading this thing. We were capturing names and people would actually write me thank you notes for it. And one of the ways we've sold the global learning program so much is it's a pop-up now on my website. Mm-hmm. And that's what people see it mostly, excuse me, and sign up for it. So building your list of names is hugely important. And you can scale that if you do things with people who have a large list of names, not because they're going to give you their list, but because if you can reach their list and those people get back to you with questions, then you can capture the names. That's why you should offer free things. If you want a copy of my comments, if you want a copy of visuals, if you want background material that led me to this belief system, I'll be happy to send them to you. Just send me your email. That's how you really build your list through other people. So it's extraordinarily important.
I would agree 100%. And even if you don't have a fancy CRM to keep track of customers, you can just use an Excel spreadsheet and you can keep a customer list in there. I would also recommend that you be connected to your customers on LinkedIn. And the reason that I recommend that is sometimes your buyers change jobs and then you lose contact with them. But if you are connected to them on LinkedIn, then you remain connected to them when things change. I also really like LinkedIn Sales Navigator because you can categorize different connections so that you've got a list of people who are buyers, recommenders, and just regular people. And when you go into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, unlike LinkedIn, the normal feed, you can actually see a feed inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator based on the lists you've created.
Okay, so now since Lisa's driven me crazy, I'm going to put tinfoil inside my hat. I'm going to just tell you something else. You can use an Excel spreadsheet. I use something called FileMaker Pro, which is ideal. It's simple and it's ideal for this. The third thing is when you create lists, I put out a huge amount of material in terms of newsletters and so forth every month. I use something called databack.com. I've used them for years and years, but it's a listserv and there are other listservs, but I use databack.com. It enables subscription, unsubscribe, change of address, all that, removes duplications. It's, you know, it's a few bucks a month, depending on how many lists you have. But if you do those things, you don't need to do a whole lot more. I've never had a CRM in my life. You know, it astounds me that people with 1/10 of my business have got virtual assistants and CRMs and all this kind of nonsense. I'm sorry. Keep things simple, you know, and don't get overly involved. I use maybe 20% of the technology that people do, but I use 100% of that 20%. That's sort of where I am.
All right, it's 2:00, Alan. Do you have time for one more question?
I do, yes.
All right.
Oh.
Let's see. Okay, so Mary says, every day I am bombarded with solicitations of promises to build a marketing system that will make me rich through LinkedIn messages and email. Over the years, I've spent many thousands of dollars investing in marketing programs that have very weak results. How do we best sort out what is best for your business, or how I might get the noise to abate?
I believe in the 1% solution, which is if you improve by 1% a day in 70 days, you're twice as good. You can do the math on your calculator. So this might be your 1% for today, Mary. All right. Don't listen to any of that crap. People who are selling marketing solutions on social media have never marketed anything themselves except how to market on social media. All right. What you need, as Lisa said earlier, is a good coach. All right. Nobody ever learned to ski by reading a book. I've written 65 or whatever books. They're in 15 languages. I'm proud of it, but nobody learns to ski by reading a book. You want to read $1 Million Consulting and learn about consulting. You want to be a great consultant, you coach with me. And so don't believe these people on the internet. Don't invest your money in them. Find yourself a good coach. And that means somebody who's been there and done that. So when I wanted to get a good skiing coach, I got a guy up on the top of the mountain with me who's 6 yards ahead of me, did what he told me to do. Bend your knees, traverse the slope, do this, do that. He wasn't in the chalet having a brandy telling me, when you go up tomorrow morning, do this. You need a coach who's been there and done that and who can get you there. But most of the stuff that you see hawked on social media is crap.
Yeah, I would say that you definitely need an individual strategy for your business and your buyer. And so if people are reaching out to you to try to sell you a system, there's two problems with that. One, you've got strangers who are trying to sell you. And that means that the approach they're taking is very likely cookie cutter. Whereas when you are recommended to someone who has gotten results from working with the person they're recommending, then you have a greater likelihood of being able to attain the same types of results if you're in a similar type of business. All right, Alan, we did it.
Am I seeing you tomorrow?
Tomorrow? Wednesday.
Yeah. Wednesday. And what are we doing? That's the podcast?
We're recording 2 podcast episodes.
Okay, good. I'm good.
So you should dress up for me.
I'll clean up.
Yes, clean up, because I might want to take some of those videos and turn them into short form videos. And, we need to make sure you're looking your absolute best on those.
All right, I'll get Bentley washed too. We'll do it together. Good.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. If you have questions for Alan, I know you can reach out to him at alan@summitconsulting.com. If you have questions for me, you can reach out lisa@lisalarter.com. If you haven't already pre-ordered our book, we would be really grateful if you did, especially if you got value from any of these fireside chats. And once you have read the book, if you would ever so kindly give us a review if you think we deserve it, we would be most appreciative. Thanks for joining us today, for being here live, and for all the great questions. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Bye.